Hi, my name is Christopher Adam, and I'm going to talk about the basics of special education. Let's start out with IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Students in special education are entitled to a free, appropriate public education. This idea actually goes back to the Founding Fathers' vision of a publicly funded education which is available to everyone. The concept stipulated in IDEA seemed to simply reinforce the rights that all should have according to the Founding Fathers. Also, according to IDEA, each child who shows signs of a disability should be appropriately tested by qualified evaluators within a reasonable time frame. And they should receive an individualized education plan. This essentially uses evaluation data to determine what a student's needs and goals are while in the special education program. Another important of IDEA is the least restrictive environment, or LRE. According to this IDEA principle, special education students should spend the maximum amount of time in a regular classroom setting. In other words, pullouts and separate classes should be a last resort, not the first option. Parent participation is also important in IDEA, since parents have the right to participate in the decision-making of their child's education, and they are encouraged to be at the student's IEP meetings. Finally, there are procedural safeguards, whereby parents have the right to access all information relevant to their child's educational planning and have the right to seek outside evaluation and/or contest decisions made for their children. Next, I'd like to discuss qualifying for special education services. Basically, under what circumstances do students qualify? First of all, the student must have a disability or disabilities. And according to IDEA, there are 13 covered disability categories. Next, educational performance must be affected by the disability. In other words, the student's disability must have a detrimental effect on the student's ability to perform academic tasks. And there is also specially designed instruction, or SDI. When accommodations aren't enough to help the student make improvements in the least restrictive environment, specially designed instruction is planned to help the student achieve in a more specialized environment. Now I'd like to go into some detail about what the least restrictive environment is. And this will involve talking about what some of the different options for services are within special education, as they make up a continuum of services. First, there's a general education classroom with support. In this setting, a student in special education is simply in a regular classroom with peers that aren't in special education, though a number of accommodations are made for the student. These can be simply different options given to the student by the teacher, or they can involve such interventions as having extra staff in the class to aid the student. Another option is the partial mainstream classroom, or partial inclusion classroom. This is a pull-out option which addresses the needs of students who are mostly in regular classrooms, but are sent out periodically to work with a specialist. And of course there are special education classes. The purpose of this option is to group students with special needs together so that they can receive targeted instruction from the same specialist at the same time. And of course there are specialized programs outside of the school district. These can involve private schools that offer a particular focus, residency settings where students can work on their living skills, and even hospital settings which can tend to certain physical needs of the students. Now let's go ahead and break down what an IEP is. The first page mostly deals with student information. Then there is the present level of educational performance, which is often abbreviated to PLOP or PLOP. The next section deals with annual goals, which are measurable, and embedded throughout this in the previous section are progress reports. Next is a section on services. These include not only descriptions of the services themselves, but a timeline of how long they are to be provided. And there's consideration given to transition planning, which involves weaning the student off of the services, especially insofar as it prepares the student for life after school. Supplementary aids are also mentioned. There is also a section dedicated to participation and to parent consent. Finally, I'd like to talk about what disproportionate representation is and why it impacts special education. Gifted students can sometimes be underrepresented. This is particularly important in New Mexico because in this state, gifted education is under the purview of special education. Underrepresentation could simply involve a student who isn't able to demonstrate the full range of their intelligence because of a language barrier, though there might be barriers of cultural convention which also get in the way. Because of this, a lot of gifted individuals unfortunately aren't identified. And of course, there could be overrepresentation as well. Sometimes students are wrongly categorized as having a learning disability simply because of ethno-linguistic issues. Again, there could be an actual language barrier, but there could also just be a very different set of cultural references and everyday metaphors, which are impeding communication and even affecting a student's ability to get work done in a satisfactory manner. I hope this has been informative. A list of references has been submitted along with the video.